Hello, my name is Kimberly. Today I will be interviewing endocrinologist Dr. Sophia Shapiro and two dynamic young adults, Julie and Jack, that are currently living with type 1 diabetes. We have all joined together to discuss the complex issue of consuming alcohol with T1D. Did you know that consuming alcohol without knowledge can quickly lead to hypoglycemia, which is low blood sugar, or hospitalization? The goal of this segment is to empower you so that if you choose to drink, that you can do so safely and with the knowledge that you need. I'm here with Dr. Sophia Shapiro. She's a pediatric endocrinologist, and today we're going to discuss a very important topic. What can someone do if they plan to go out and have an evening, they want to have a couple of drinks? What can someone do to be safe?
If you do drink, right, more
Yes.
than one drink, which, is defined by how much alcohol and how much carbs, but generally one can of beer or one glass of wine or small 1.5 ounce hard liquor, that is enough to cause hypoglycemia.
Are there any drinks that are safer to ingest?
Yes, I would recommend if you are going to choose to drink beer or wine because they have less alcohol by volume and they have more carbs. That's what you want. So the big picture is that when you drink alcohol, both during and after, your liver is unable to make glucose, okay? Neither from breaking down glycogen nor from making new glucose. And you're at very high risk of low blood sugar, what we call in our type 1 world hypoglycemia. And that can be severe. If you know you're gonna be drinking, you need to bolus less, right? You need to think ahead. So how much less, depending on your activity level that day, also depends if you're gonna be dancing, right?
Yes.
If you're gonna be, if this is like a graduation, college something, and you're gonna be walking around, right? You need to plan for that. So you bolus less, and you also, if you're on a pump, you set a temporary basal rate. If you took Lantus, if you're taking it that night, many of our patients take Lantus in the evening, you take significantly less.
Yes.
I would recommend at least 20 to 30% less. You may need 50% less.
Yes.
Once you start drinking, right, and your liver can make glucose, you need to be eating. The risk of going low is much less if you're eating during, right? And unfortunately, at many of these college parties, they have, alcohol, but they don't have snacks, so they run out very fast.
Right.
So that's what I mean. You have to really plan ahead, and that's where the psychological aspect comes in.
Yes.
Because a lot of our young people, they're so afraid to let others know that they have type 1. So you really have to, think about ways that work for you, right?
Yes.
Many of us can be comfortable and say, yeah, dude, I have type 1, that's why I'm always looking at my phone.
Yeah.
But if you don't, right, some things like, if you don't want to come with a backpack with your things that you need to bring, it's easier for guys, I think. You can wear those cool cargo pants, right? And you have your meter here, and you have your snacks in the other pocket, right? But you can't kind of dismiss your health, and especially with this high risk of lows, for looking cool, right? So drink beer or wine, and don't bolus, and eat during, right?
Okay, so this is important to me because a lot of people I've heard think that drinking vodka or hard alcohol, because there's less carbs, are maybe more friendly to a type 1 diabetic. You're saying absolutely not. It's the alcohol content that is dangerous, not the carbohydrates.
Exactly, because when you think of vodka, rum, whiskey, they have 40% alcohol by volume, unlike 12% in wine, 6% in beer, and they have 0 carbs, right? So, and you just need a small amount of vodka to give you that hypoglycemia risk.
Right, and a lot of times drinks with vodka have fruit juice or other things that could even make the sugar
So
higher.
you will go high initially, right? Just like after a meal, if you drink wine or beer or a mixer with vodka and some fruity mixer, but that's temporary. For 12 hours after that, you're at risk for low. The low blood sugar we're talking about with alcohol-induced hypoglycemia can last during and up to 12 hours, right? Not many people know that. So up to 12 hours. So if you're going out drinking typically around 9 p.m., let's say on a Saturday night,
Yes.
this takes you to 9 a.m. the next morning. And the truth is, yes, it's the safest and best not to drink with type 1, but if you want to have that experience, you have to be prepared, you have to know which steps to take, and you cannot get so drunk that you will lose insight. Even if you're drunk, right, and somebody gets you to that bed, right, and a friend wants to help, you have to check before you go to sleep. Must. Either by a finger stick or your continuous glucose monitor, you have to see where you are. Because if you are, 79, right, and you have a whole night of those 12 hours ahead of you, I always recommend, even if you're quote unquote normal blood sugar, 120, you have to eat before you go to sleep, right? There's no new glucose forming the whole night. So if you drink more than one to two, depending on your activity level and your, meal, you have to eat. Complex carbs and protein,
Yes.
right? At least 30 grams, and don't cover, because that's your buffer for the night.
And so when you're in bed, how soon afterwards do you recommend setting your alarm to check the blood sugar?
So that depends. If you're wearing the monitor, right, that gives you an additional kind of help, because you can set an alarm.
Right.
Not only that, share your data, right? We're fortunate to be living in an age where, if you're so savvy with all your apps and all your,
Yes.
Facebook, use the technology to your advantage, right? If you don't have a continuous glucose monitor, absolutely set an alarm. I always encourage my patients and families to have a team, right? You have to plan ahead. Your friend, your significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend, partner, they have to know ahead of time, I'm going out drinking tonight. If you have a continuous glucose monitor, I want to share my data with you. If you, see my numbers dropping, can you please call me? If this first kind of backup fails, if your alarm goes off but you're so drunk that you don't wake up.
Don't hear the alarm, yeah.
Right? Your friend or girlfriend or boyfriend or brother will see
Yes.
and be like, and call you again and again, or call your roommate, right?
Yes.
And say, dude, wake him up, he's 59, like, have him eat something. So what do you
Eat something, take glucose, take a
Exactly,
juice. Yeah.
exactly. So there's a difference between treating a low, right, and avoiding a low going forward. So when you treat a low, we all know 4 glucose tablets or 4 ounces of regular soda or juice, right? But then you still have, let's say, half the night ahead. You have to eat again, right? So this is why it's risky. This is why you have to plan ahead. So Kim, you asked me a very important question earlier about if a friend finds someone unresponsive.
Unconscious, yes.
Right. So, I always recommend, especially if somebody's not close and doesn't know how to check a blood sugar,
Call 911.
call 911. Also, you have to be wearing a med alert, right? Hopefully, you're at your stage in your life when your close friends or roommates, it's so important to disclose that information. They know you have type 1. But if you find someone somewhere at a party, right, and people don't know, the med alert, whether it's a bracelet or a necklace, will tell them, right? Because let's face it, when you see somebody unconscious, you don't think low blood sugar. You think either they're drunk or they had
Sleeping.
or they had a heart or fainted, right? So they go for the pulse. They listen for the breathing, right? So those are still the first steps. But when they do that, they will find the med alert. And some patients tell me, oh, but Dr. Shapiro, I have it in my phone. I have it in my wallet. That's not going to do it. Nobody's going to look there as the first thing. It has to be on your body.
A lot of times I can imagine someone's out and they're clearly inebriated, and a friend might want to help. I think people really want to help. They want to know what they can do. They want to know how to help their friend. Someone could think it's a good idea to put their friend in bed, not knowing that that friend may never wake up, because during the sleep they could go unconscious. It's really important to claim who you are and to be open about type 1. And I can also say, it's okay not to drink. You don't need to drink. Treat your body, in a healthy way. But if you do drink, let your closest friends, let your husband, let your spouse know, some really key important things, so that you can enjoy yourself at a party and the other person can too.
When you're drunk, you will have significant changes in your mental status, right? You'll feel anxious, dizzy, and once you're less than 40, you probably will pass out,
Pass
right?
out, yes.
Less than 30, closer to 20, you can have a seizure, okay? And less than 20, that's when hypoglycemic coma, when you're unconscious, happens. and it can look exactly like being drunk. And especially if you're one of these young people who hasn't come to terms with their type 1 and who hasn't disclosed or shared that with anyone, and people around you don't know that you have type 1, they will look and say, oh, he went out last night. Usually when we have severe lows, right, and we're semi-conscious, we can drink juice, we can drink, soda, or we can chew the glucose tablets. When someone's unconscious, the worst thing you can do is to try to get them to drink, because guess what? Their reflex, right, is all impaired, their gag reflex, and it's gonna go down the trachea, the wrong tube, and they're gonna choke, right, or aspirate. So that's even worse. So gel is perfect because you put it on, their lips, you put it inside their mouth, and the buccal mucosa, the cheek is very vascular, has great blood supply, and it will raise the blood sugar.
It's just liquid sugar. Okay? You cannot go out drinking without taking a couple of packets, and don't forget it. It's life-saving.
So I absolutely agree with you. Gel can be life-saving.
Yeah.
But again, kind of stepping back, that's kind of the last, resort. Our whole point today, our whole meeting, is to educate our patients and families to prevent it.
You talk about the glucagon if someone's unconscious. Do you recommend that we still administer it?
Absolutely. We know it's not going to work because of, the liver detoxifying the alcohol.
Yes.
But you should still give it. It may work slightly, and slightly is better than nothing. So
absolutely.
You should still give it. I will mention that now, over the past 2 months, glucagon can now be given intranasally. Okay, we never had that before, but the standard,
glucagon?
Right, is still the glucagon kit, right? 1 milligram in the thigh once, or 1 spray in 1 nostril once with the nasal. Okay, and I think the nasal is really taking over because for non-clinical people, it's so much easier.
What advice do you have for parents if a child is getting ready to go off to college and they're concerned about, the hazing, all the different parties? What advice?
Right, so that's the big question. So first and foremost, it starts with you. Okay, if you're leaving for school, that senior year, this is the time to become in peace, kind of to accept your type 1. We have families who kind of embrace type 1.
Yes.
I think Kim is certainly one of these parents. You want to use it as a platform.
Do you recommend parents discuss the possibility of having an experimental drink in the home?
It has to start with, being open about it, being realistic about it. Speak to one another. Speak to your parents and say, I really want to drink, but I heard that you can't drink with type 1. I want parents to talk about their experiences in college, right?
Yes.
Some of our parents have type 1, right? So that's an additional insight on life experience. But
yes.
Most of our patients don't, but still, on one hand, parents absolutely, like you said, want their child to be safe and maybe, quote unquote, sacrifice this social life for their health, right? But on the other hand, people who go to college, they want their child to participate and be, included and have this full college experience. So we have to kind of weigh the risks and benefits.
Absolutely.
So number one, be open with your son or daughter. Say, okay, so let's talk about drinking. Knowing all this, what do you think you want to do?
A lot of people say, well, my child's just not gonna drink. They're just gonna smoke pot. And are there any risks with smoking pot? Does that affect your blood sugar?
Right. So marijuana, on one hand, does not, influence your blood sugar directly like alcohol does. Right. It's not going to make you very high or low. It may increase your appetite. It may have you have higher glucose levels. But ultimately, 2 major risks. One is lung injury, right? We already have a risk factor, let's face it, and we can't get rid of it, right? Our young people with type 1 diabetes have, risk for heart disease because of these, tiny blood vessels over time getting inflamed, even with good control, right? So why give yourself another risk factor? And also memory, right? Marijuana affects memory, both short-term and long-term memory.
One thing I've told my daughter is that no matter what, I'm going to help her. No matter what, I'm here for her. People aren't perfect, and things happen. I never want her to be afraid to call me. I never would want her to put herself at risk because she's afraid. So I support her, I love her, and I think parents need to know that no matter what, their parents are not going to get angry at them, that they're going to help them. And God forbid there is an emergency, that it can be used as a learning experience. and hopefully, grow stronger together.
Right.
Thank you so much. It was just incredible, all the information. I really believe that knowledge is power, and realistic parenting is our message. And do you have any last words of wisdom?
Well, let's see. I think we as a community should use our resources, right? Because we're very blessed to have the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, and you as families, I'm sure, have other families you know. It's a team, right? You have your family, you have your friends, you have, us medical professionals. So use that team.
Hi, my name is Jack. I'm a type 1 diabetic. I've had diabetes now for 24 years.
How do you prepare for a night of drinking?
So normally, nothing absurd. I make sure that I have eaten the day before. I certainly want to make sure that my blood sugars are on a normal trend. I want to make sure I'm not coming up from a crazy low or coming down from a big high, and having to deal with a big fluctuation. I'll have a meal. I'll give myself maybe only part of what I would normally give myself insulin for, so I don't go low while I'm consuming alcohol. You want to be, let's say, to pick a number, 20 to 40 points above the higher number of your range. So for me, my higher range is 80 to 120. So picking that number I want to be anywhere from 140 to 160. So slightly above that range, not massively high, feeling comfortable, and so somewhere in that sort of area.
Do you take any snacks or take any sports gels with you before you go out?
I'll try to have glucose tabs, maybe a granola bar. If I'm at a party and they've got snacks or something, or at a bar, personally, I can never stop eating, so I'm constantly picking at the peanuts, or I'm grabbing the mini sliders or whatever it may be that the bar has. I'll keep something in my jacket though.
Do you set limitations to the amount of drinks you have?
Absolutely. I think, the most important thing you can do, especially as you're starting to get into drinking, is understand your tolerance. It's different for everybody. People are going to say, hey, drink 7, drink 5, and it's just important for you to understand how much you can consume before you start to feel the effects. Kids at parties are not concerned between opening a bottle of wine or opening a bottle of vodka. Same thing, gets them drunk, and they're chugging down shots, they're doing whatever, they're trying to have a good time. They're not concerned with 80 proof versus 6% beer. They're just trying to get drunk, they're trying to have a good time. Understand that a can of beer, bottle of beer, has considerably less alcohol content than a vodka and soda, than a Long Island iced tea, whatever it is that you prefer. Understand what that does to you.
Can you tell the difference between feeling buzzed or being drunk versus being high or low?
Personally, it's harder for me to distinguish a low when I'm under the influence. I find that my symptoms of being low are very similar to being buzzed or drunk. I'm a little loopy, I'm a little disconnected with everything around me. I take a little longer to respond. When I'm high, normally, personally, I have to use the bathroom a lot. I get butterflies, pins and needles in my fingers. And it's subtle, so it's a little harder to pick up on, especially if I've consumed a lot of alcohol. And so I would say that being low is probably the more dangerous of the two.
What would you like your friends to do or family members to do if they suspect that you've had too much to drink? Is there something that is helpful?
So I think it's always important to have someone around you that is aware of it. They don't necessarily have to be your nurse, and it's not, no one wants to have to deal with the responsibility so that you can totally ignore everything. But if they see you acting differently or not normal outside of maybe just being drunk, then it's important to have them be able to pull you aside and say, hey, are you okay? Do you want to test your sugar? Just as a quick reminder, again, once you're drunk, you're less aware of everything around you. You're not as sharp, and it's certainly different for everybody. But I've had lots of times where I wasn't able to recognize that I was feeling low, And I've had a friend come up to me and asked if I was all right, and I tested and I was far lower than I thought. And I stopped drinking, I drank a soda, and then I cooled it off for a while before I had another beer.
It's recommended that diabetics, if they've been drinking, when they go to bed, that they set an alarm clock several hours ahead to check their blood sugar to make sure that they aren't going dangerously low. Is that something that you do?
Absolutely, absolutely. Especially nights that I have a lot to drink or nights that I've been out with friends. If I had a big night, yeah, I'll set that alarm because it's important to make sure that, if you had a really good time, and hopefully you did, but let's say you were partying and you felt really good and then you go to bed, that's a huge window that you're out, and you got to make sure sometime after that point that you're not going down or you're not going massively up.
Jack, have you ever been hospitalized because of alcohol consumption?
I have. One time in college, I went on drinking. In the morning, I grabbed something to drink in the middle of the dark, and I grabbed a thing of Coke without really understanding where my sugar was. I woke up a couple hours later in the hospital having diabetic ketoacidosis, and it sucked, and it was awful, and it was certainly a thing to learn from. Now I know, don't do that again, stupid, and don't put yourself in that situation. It's not going to help you. It's impacting your long-term health, and it's concerning those around you. You don't necessarily want to be the person that says, sorry guys, but I'm not feeling too well right now, I gotta go. But at the same token, understand that, not everyone's the hottest thing on the block, and you gotta really be proactive for you, and you gotta advocate for yourself. There's nothing wrong with trying to make friends, there's nothing wrong with trying to fit into that group, but if you feel that they're putting you in unhealthy situations, if you feel you're not being looked out for, or you're being, God forbid, abused, then you got to be able to walk away from that situation. You got to be able to say, no, I'm not doing this, and you got to try to put yourself in healthy environments where you can have that same level of fun and meet other individuals. I always try to be, a little more bold or a little more brash than most, and if I got to tell someone to get out of my face, then I will, because at a certain point they're not the diabetic, they don't have this issue, and I would so much rather wake up with a healthy blood sugar than wake up with the admiration of some guy who joined a frat a couple days ago. If you gotta say no, you say no, you go find the other party, you go round up your friends, break out a board game, watch a movie, go for a hike, whatever it is. You don't have to be in those dangerous situations if you feel uncomfortable. I think people maybe feel a little safer with marijuana, pot, whatever you want to call it, because the initial effect is a little more mellow. You do get lazy, you do want to sit on the couch, and you don't want to move around as much, and you maybe want to watch it, maybe do a movie. And so I think on the surface level that might be more preferable or seen as more safe. But I think it also comes down to, it doesn't make a big difference. You're going to feel a lot worse if you smoke 3 blunts versus drinking 2 beers. That's going to put you in a worse situation. So they're both influences. At the end of the day, they are both drugs. And so I think in moderation, an argument could be made for pot being safer. But at the same time, if you're smart about drinking, it's not a huge margin that pot's winning there. There's no, diabetes doesn't take a time out, and it's always happening, it's always moving. There's no pause button, and so if you're high and you just ate 3 mooncakes, then yeah, you're gonna have a really high blood sugar. If you're high and you decide to go for a long walk because the trees are so beautiful, you're gonna get low because whatever. A lot of people, have a beer, walk into a room and smoke a bowl, hit a blunt, whatever it is. Life comes at you fast, so it's going to happen. But you understand that both have very strong effects, and so don't be a yes man. Don't go crazy, and if you're drunk, probably don't do it. My message would be to the degree that they can, maybe bring a soft introduction to alcohol, have a quick pep talk, have a quick rundown what being smart is, what being smart is not. You really do need to understand how your body operates, what alcohol is going to do to you, and what you need to do to stay healthy and keep everything rolling and grooving and make sure you can go have those fun times. No one wants to wake up in the hospital. No one wants to get kicked out of school. No one wants to go back home because they had a really bad time because they drank too much.
So today I'm here with Julie, thank you, and we are actually going to record over the course of 24 hours Julie's blood sugar after she's had a glass of alcohol. So Julie, do you have a drink of choice?
I do. For today I'm going to be having bourbon. It's Buffalo Trace bourbon.
Okay, great. How many carbohydrates are in bourbon?
I have no idea. I really have no idea. So for me, when I do straight liquors, it tends to work out better, and I just don't count for any carbs.
You don't count for any
If
carbs.
I were to mix it with juice, that's where it gets tricky, so I just opt out of the juice.
Okay.
Beer is a whole other ball game, and so is wine. So I usually stick with either straight liquor. I just like the taste of bourbon, or actually spiked seltzer is my other favorite.
Spiked seltzer. So what's the name of that?
White Claw is
White
the
Claw.
brand. Yeah.
Okay.
There's only 2 carbs in that, and that also, even though it's got carbs, I don't account for anything. I don't take anything for that.
So yeah, you don't bolus, you don't give yourself
Correct.
any insulin. Okay. So I find that fascinating because a lot of the data that I have researched says that the drinks that have higher alcohol content are in a way more dangerous because there's a possibility of going low. But obviously you've had experience, and I'm just curious, what would you like to share?
So for me, that almost never happens anymore. It happened earlier in my drinking, but I was mixing drinks, I was drinking a lot, I
Right.
wasn't eating as much, I wasn't very smart about it, but I couldn't even tell you the last time my blood sugar went low from drinking.
So you tend to go high. When you prepare for a night of drinking, is there something specific that you do?
I don't think too different from the average individual if you're being a responsible drinker. I make sure I'm eating, of
Yes.
course. Not super high carbs, because that's still something we have to take in consideration.
What is your average alcohol consumption, say on a given event or a night? 2 drinks, 3 drinks?
Yeah, that's probably about it. If it's gonna be straight like liquor, I probably would end up with like 3.
Okay, so cheers.
Cheers.
Okay, here we go.
Are we actually drinking this?
Yeah, you can drink. You don't have to drink the whole thing. I mean, you can drink what you want. So, I'm curious, what is your blood sugar?
Checking my CGM. It says 168 right now.
So you're 168, and we are not going to cover for this drink at all.
Correct. I definitely am like snacking a little bit all throughout the night. Most of the
Perfect.
time I'm thinking like not 0 carb, but low carb and high protein for me, because the protein kind of balances out the blood sugars.
Okay.
And the carb at least gives the alcohol kind of something to hang on
Yeah.
to.
What advice do you have for young adults and people are, preparing to move out of the house or go away to college? What can they expect? What's the best advice you can give them if they want to go out and they want to enjoy themselves with some drinks?
Make sure you're drinking your water. I would be tracking how many drinks you're having, just to pay attention to,
Yes.
especially if of course, the drinking and driving thing. So I think that's something people are paying attention to now anyway.
Hopefully, Uber.
Right. But still paying attention to the amount of drinks you're having, the types of drinks. Definitely eating food.
Eating food.
Unfortunately, I feel like young adults tend to overdrink and undereat
Yes.
to begin with, which could bring you into low blood sugar. But that's usually quickly followed by binge eating
Okay.
and not bolusing for it because they're not paying attention.
Yes.
So it's just like everything should be super just hyper aware. So make sure if you're eating, if you're drinking, that you're eating. If you're drinking, that you're drinking water. And that when you do eat, bolus for it. I bolus for the food and none for the drinks. That's just what works for me.
what were some of the common drinks that people should be looking for? Let's talk about craft beers.
It's very difficult and very tricky because along with tasty beer usually comes with high alcohol percentage. And along with that comes carbs. These people aren't doing one drink. So
that's what I can imagine, especially I remember being young at frat parties, unlimited beer.
Even if you're having something like a Blue Moon, that's a wheat beer that's full of carbs. We're not talking like Bud Light here. It's gonna have more carbs, which is something you have to consider. Then you might have to bolus for that, and that's an additional thing you have to think about, and if you're under the influence, might not be considering.
Say I'm type 1 and I've never had a drink before and I want to have a glass of something. What do you suggest that I start with? What's your recommendation?
Okay, so what I love and is super popular with the young adults right now anyway is the hard seltzers or spiked seltzers. There's several different brands, but they usually range about 4 to 6% alcohol, so it's nothing different than, let's say, a Bud Light that you would typically have maybe as your first drink, but it has virtually no carbs. The most I've seen is, I think, 3.
So you clearly would not be bolusing for it.
Yeah, you wouldn't be bolusing for it. They're very low in calorie. So a lot of people were going to like vodka sodas, and now that's being replaced with hard seltzers because there's maybe like 100 calories per can, which is a whole serving.
It sounds like it's safer because it's actually labeled and measured correctly. What would you want your friends to do if they suspect that you were in trouble?
I don't expect them to say like, "Hi, I think you should probably bolus right now." That's probably too much for them to. Too much responsibility on somebody else.
So clearly, if they feel like you're acting different, it sounds like a good idea for them to bring it to your attention and for you to check your blood sugar.
If your blood sugar is high, you're sluggish, you're lethargic, you might slur your words. Same thing if you're drunk. So if someone notices anything off about you, I think they should
say something. Do you set an alarm when you go to bed at night if you've been drinking to check your blood sugar?
I don't.
You don't.
Again, because of the CGM though. Because if it's gonna go in any way, shape, or form, it's gonna alert, alert, alert in the middle of the night. We're waking up from those alarms anyway.
You know, interesting. Some people don't wake up from the alarm. Do you ever, have someone that knows that you've been drinking just check it on you, or do you share your data with anyone? So in case you don't wake up.
Right, so I don't have a CGM where you can share the data. I know some of the phones do. I don't, but my boyfriend is around and he'll, without even waking me up, sometimes just check my blood sugar. So I might just be one of the luckier people that has someone that knows what they're doing for me.
Have you ever thrown up?
Yes.
Okay, so what happens to your blood sugar?
So that's usually hit or miss, but that, if anything, is where I tend to see the low blood sugars happen.
Okay.
So because of the drinks of choice that I usually do, I don't end up going low because I happen to like the high carb alcohol content.
Yes.
But if I were having something, let's say like this, but in excess, and I end up getting sick at the end of the night, that might be where I see the blood sugars drop.
Exactly.
So that's where I need help from somebody else. That's where I'm super grateful for a CGM. And that's assuming that these people have these devices.
Exactly. Support. What do you think about smoking pot? Do you feel it's safer for a type 1 diabetic?
The short answer is yes. To me, zero effect on blood sugar.
Exactly.
The only downsides to it, besides the fact that it's like I said, it doesn't affect your blood sugar. It does alter your perceptions. So you are stuffing your face with everything that's around you and forgetting to bolus for it. And then some of the side effects also mimic low or high blood sugar. So there's been several times where I'm convinced my blood sugar's low, and because I still have low awareness, without even checking my blood sugar, I might eat, and then I'm like, wait a minute, it's not even low. I just overeat, and now I'm through the roof.
I see.
So it's the awareness still is an issue with drugs are drugs. Drinking is a drug. That alcohol is a drug. So as long as your awareness is altered, I feel like you just 100% have to pay attention to your blood sugar. I think it's important for parents to have that conversation with the children. I would just say, hey, if you're going to be drinking, tell me what your plan is. Call me if you need me. Not even, you have to have an open line of communication with your kid, and I think that's super important when you're not even necessarily going off to college, just becoming an adult.
Everyone knows someone that has type 1. It's not a big deal.
Yeah,
it's owning
for
who
sure.
you are
Yeah.
and making sure that you take care of yourself.
That's all it comes down to.
Yeah.
Your life is in your hands as in anyone else. We just have to think a little bit more about it.
Thank you, Julie. That was wonderful. Thank you for sharing your insights and for giving some guidance to the people out there that are really curious about this topic. So much. Thank you.
Thank you. My pleasure.